If Paul Levesque or Vince McMahon called, would you take the call? Would you be open to having a conversation?
I'm 40 years old, and I try to be as zen and as wise as I possibly can be. And my life has taught me a lot of the times that I would be confrontational when there's maybe no need to be confrontational. You know, if somebody cuts you off in traffic, like, really, who gives a shit? You know, you're gonna see them at the red light. You know, and people who are racing to that red light, like, I'm not racing to that red light anymore. Like, I'd be. And this is the dangerous thing, and this will be taken out of context, and this will be lesser websites clickbait for the next week. But I'll have a conversation with anybody, you know. But it's nothing I'm reaching. Like, I'm not calling them, you know. But if they're like, oh, hey, I mean, I'll talk to you, you know, and see what you got to say. But it better be good.
CM Punk's return to WWE elicited one of the biggest reactions in years and a celebratory note to end the 37th Survivor Series in front of a raucous Chicago audience. It was hard not to compare it to the same scene in Chicago just over 2 years ago when Punk walked into the United Center and by extension, AEW. If you could inject Tony Khan with true serum, it would be a fascinating answer if he would have done it all over again for the business generated by Punk, coupled with the litany of problems, suspensions, and his eventual firing. For the WWE audience, it's back to August of 2021. Everything is perfect. It's a homecoming for the prodigal son with endless matches, feuds, and potential as the company rides a wave of momentum. In 18 months, this return will be afforded the proper context and will either be a stroke of genius where credit will be given to Nick Khan and Paul Levesque for going out on a limb and it playing off masterfully, or it fails and will further strengthen the argument that Punk is unmanageable.
Trust me, ladies and gentlemen, I'm the fucking happiest I've been in I don't know how, at least 3 years. Great. Legitimately. You know what I mean? You know, I find these other things that have made me happy, and I thought this thing that I thought I loved, it just made me so miserable all the time. It made me miserable. And I guess with like the black and the white of it, when you just boil it all down, the essence of it was, I was miserable. I was unhappy. Fuck it. I made myself happy. I left. Like, that's what it boils down to. So, you know, it was a very, it wasn't an easy decision to make, but it was also a long time coming.
While it feels unfair to paint such extreme conclusions, it feels like it's either one or the other. Bringing Punk and making him just another guy would be pointless and not worth the investment or aggravation that it could open themselves up to. The value of Punk is putting him into a position to be a difference maker in a period where the domestic television rights for Raw are of the utmost importance and finding as many suitors that can fit at the negotiating table. Punk's return occurred 1 week after one of the most impressive Raw figures of the year, its largest 18 to 49 audience through this year's NFL season, against the Chiefs and Eagles game that attracted 29 million viewers. Punk's first appearance on Raw in close to a decade should topple last week's audience and stands to be one of the biggest episodes of Raw in years. While reigning at the helm for over a year with varying levels of input from Vince McMahon throughout, Paul Levesque is truly steering the creative ship solo, and this experiment with Punk will give us a lot of insight toward the style of management he can execute. This is not the same as brokering a deal with Bruno Sammartino, where the heat lay on the feet of Vince McMahon. Levesque had no shortage of problems directly as both a performer and an executive. Going back to 2011, during the explosion of Punk's popularity after the promo in Las Vegas and Money in the Bank title win, Punk infamously entered into a program with Kevin Nash. Due to a health issue, Triple H replaced Nash and faced Punk in a no disqualification match at the Night of Champions show that year. The match was won by Triple H and was a grudge that Punk harbored, and by his description, brought up to Hunter the night he walked out in January of 2014. It was something that he never let rest. Fast forward to 2014, and the two were set to wrestle at WrestleMania 30 when Punk left the company, and the domino effect of his departure allowed for the rebooking of the show and leading to Bryan Danielson becoming the focal point.
And I turned to Hunter and I said, all due respect, I do not need to wrestle you. You need to wrestle me. I do not want to wrestle you. I seriously resent you for not putting me over 3 years ago when you should have. That would have been best for business, but you had to fucking come in and squash it. And then I had to lose to fucking Truth and Miz. Like, it didn't make any business sense then. It doesn't make any business sense now. And I'm in a position now where I can tell you that I don't have to, and nor do I want to wrestle you at WrestleMania. I don't care if I was supposed to win, which I was. I didn't care. I didn't want to give him the fucking privilege. Hunter was gritting his teeth, and I knew, I mean, he never liked me. It's one of those situations where you always hear the stories in the dirt sheets about, oh, Hunter says this about Punk and all this negative stuff, but me and him in a room together, never any good vibes. Always negative. The way he would always look sideways at me, the way he always treated me. For instance, a simple courtesy call. Hey, That is the European tour. You can't do the movie. We're going to have Randy do it. But he thought he didn't have to do that because I was a piece of shit.
Both Levesque and Punk will need to swallow past grudges for this relationship to work. But it isn't as simple as we all grow, as Levesque said at the press conference on Saturday, and that they aren't the same people as they were 10 years ago. The vast majority of the audience isn't questioning whether Punk is still the person that left WWE 10 years ago. They're asking if this is the same guy that was fired 13 weeks ago over his actions in AEW and the perception, right or wrong, that he left the company in disarray due to his actions. Punk has been the most outspoken of any past talents over the past decade. This has included damning remarks on the Art of Wrestling podcast the year he left, going after The Miz for participating in Saudi Arabia events and equating the revenue to blood money, while condemning WWE's system and way of management that drove him to hate pro wrestling. It's not to say one can't adjust their opinions or revisit past criticism, but getting into the head of Punk would suggest he's doing this both for his own legacy and continuation in the industry, while also being fueled by a chip on his shoulder after his recent firing.
I loved ROH so much, and I can't explain how happy I am that my footage, it's in good hands. It's just good to know that it's in the hands of somebody who treat it well. I literally feel like my baby is in somebody's hands that I know will raise the child the right way and do good things with it. And it won't get made into just some tab on a shitty, confusing app that's hard to navigate. And the boys don't get paid anything off it. You know what I mean? So it's just, it's very good.
The AEW equation is hard to skip past. If Punk is a smashing success in WWE and replicates the surge of momentum that Cody Rhodes brought over, then AEW will be looked at as the company that fumbled Punk and will be a public win for Paul Levesque and his ability to manage. AEW was in a no-win position, and firing Punk was the only choice. Many stars would have been fired for a whole lot less, given Punk's public call-out of Hangman Page on a live broadcast, his actions at the press conference at All Out last year, returning to television and immediately taking a shot at the Young Bucks and later Hangman Page over his merch sales, and then climaxing with the disaster at All In with Tony Khan and Jack Perry. Bringing back Punk a third time would have been handing your biggest star a loaded gun and just putting out your arms and turning your back to him. The relationship was dead after All In, and his leaving the company cannot be compared to Cody Rhodes nor Eric Bischoff releasing Steve Austin in 1995 and not realizing what he had. You could equate Punk's signing of that to Kevin Nash, Scott Hall, and Hulk Hogan in 2002, when the three were lightning rods after the fall of WCW, and the three of them considered contributors to its downfall. But they were stars, and unlike 2023, WWE needed an injection of such, and the same narrative was at play in WWE that year, that they would not tolerate the past actions of those three. It was a very polarizing decision to bring them in. Hall was a disaster and gone in 3 months. Nash was injured for most of the run and at best can be ruled an incomplete, while Hogan had a surprisingly good run that year with programs against The Rock, Kurt Angle, and Brock Lesnar. But today, WWE is on the upswing, not coming off of a popularity peak like they were 21 years ago. From a practical standpoint, putting Punk on the road for all of the live events doesn't seem logical. At best, you would want to cherry pick big events for Punk to appear on, but this is a television industry, and preserving him for big matches and done sparingly will produce the best mileage. Given the nature of the industry, it's hard to imagine there won't be some resentment of Punk, as outspoken as they come, entering a company with a reduced schedule and a great contract when business is booming. It would be easy to see the mindset of the current crop of stars enjoying the biggest boom period of their careers and feeling like they are pulling the wagon and don't need any assistance, especially if that person has been painted a malcontent. This is the mentality that likely contributed to Steve Austin's burnout in 2002 when he started to see business declining after years of carrying the load and bringing the company to unprecedented heights. Fast forward 1 year, and Bill Goldberg comes into the company and is able to negotiate a limited schedule, and somehow receives criticism for the negotiated upon terms. The upside with Punk is there's far more potential given where he is popularity-wise, and at 45 years of age can still go at a high level as we saw in AEW, despite some serious injuries since coming back 2 years ago. According to Dave Meltzer, it's a multi-year deal, and whether Punk sees the end of it or not, the objective should be the short term and getting him into WrestleMania and maximizing while while the iron is hot. Basic indicators would suggest Seth Rollins being his first major program, but there are endless possibilities, including Roman Reigns that would represent the biggest through their legitimate history and the Paul Heyman connection, Kevin Owens, Cody Rhodes, Brock Lesnar. You can't even dismiss the potential of that elusive Steve Austin match that was teased over a decade ago and doesn't seem as far-fetched today. It's very easy to fall into the story of the comeback and the feel-good nature of the prodigal son returning, but also becomes easy to erase the circumstances behind his departure in 2014.
All that shit could have destroyed me, being unjustly sued, and a lot of people could have stood up, said something, helped out, but they didn't because, they value their jobs or whatever. A lot of them are now fired and work here now too, so that's always interesting. It's just important to show people that, recognize when you got a second chance, jump on it, and be grateful and appreciative, I think so it's important to tell those painful stories.
Punk's relationship with WWE and therefore professional wrestling in 2014 was a fractured one. The man was completely burnt out and fearful of his own life, something he reiterated several times, classifying himself as being sick while in WWE. His last run with the company did an untold amount of damage on him both physically and mentally, so it would be hard to ignore those issues and question the man's ability to withstand the politics, grind, and mental anguish that this business has placed upon him. AEW was supposed to be a respite for him, but it was anything but. While the good will be glossed over, it's impossible to watch CM Punk's introductory press conference in AEW and then contrast to the same setting at All Out 2022 and not ask yourself, what happened? It's as though this industry breeds a completely different version of Phil Brooks. There's the everyday, more easygoing Phil Brooks, and then the wrestling-consumed CM Punk. Regardless of your opinion of Punk, pro wrestling never came off as just a job to the guy. His passion was rekindled in AEW and very evident on camera, especially throughout that first year, through his construction of matches, love letters to Bret Hart, working with younger talent, and the feeling that he was a legitimate difference maker, which he was. The politics and the paranoia doomed that relationship, the cracks forming in early 2022, climaxing it all out, and led to a year of suspensions, rumors, reports, cryptic comments, call-outs, separate dressing rooms, and an untenable situation that resulted in the company's biggest star being fired publicly. For all the concerns laid out, WWE has insulated itself, where the risk-reward quotient is skewed to the latter. If this is a home run, they get plenty of big matches, an automatic boost of CM Punk in a new environment, and the momentum continues for the company. Coupled with the strengthening of Raw, Punk can bring a whole lot to the table. Conversely, if it doesn't work out, Punk gets injured, Punk doesn't shift business around, has a fallout, or any other reasons that could come, WWE can walk away from the Punk business, and it's unlikely to send them into a tailspin. It's not like Punk is coming in and captaining the ship, nor would he be naive to believe he is above everyone in the company. The first step is tonight's Raw in Nashville that should attract a large audience for Punk's first words inside of a WWE ring and setting the path for his first program. It's a long time to hold off his first match until the Royal Rumble, but it can be done. Raw has held up exceptionally well this season against Monday Night Football, and having him wrestle on television against someone the level of a Shinsuke Nakamura as a precursor to a bigger opponent at the Royal Rumble could be one way of going about things. In the old era, you'd be incentivized to wait until the pay-per-view and pay to see the first match, but it's a different landscape and television is a huge priority. Punk could also mean a lot on the post-Christmas week of live events if we're going with the idea of cherry-picking select live events to put him in the ring for. Over the next months, there will be endless debate and discussion with a microscope on every move and word by CM Punk and its meaning. It's the attention he commands that has made him a transformative star in an industry that could have moved on without him, but doesn't manage to be able to. And Saturday's reaction in Chicago was confirmation that if you're a star, there will always be an audience extending its arms.
Possibly for me, the most important thing I'm going to say right now, and this is for everybody at home, this is for everybody who bought a ticket, this is for everybody in the back. If at all through my journey, any of my personal choices or decisions related to my life made you feel disappointed or let down, let me just say, I understand. If you all try to understand that I was never going to get healthy physically, mentally, spiritually, or emotionally, staying in the same place that got me sick in the first place.
That is it for me. We hope you enjoyed this edition of the audio news update. If you enjoy these, they come out multiple times per week. Consider jumping up to the double or espresso levels here at postwrestlingcafe.com. Not only will you get these audio updates on a weekly basis, but you will also be supporting Post Wrestling and all of the shows that we put out.